Welcome back to Stage Dive. Here we are at season 3. It's been a magical slate of interviews for this season. We have an intimacy coordinator. We have a singer who's blowing up on TikTok. We have dancers. We have photographers. We have stand-up comedians. So many different kinds of performances. So many different kinds of humans. I loved making this season, and I hope you enjoy it. My next guest on the podcast is Jasmine Ellis. Now, when you start this episode, it's going to start in a place you probably did not expect, which is Starbucks cups, but it is a beautiful insight into what a lively, intelligent, passionate, motivated human Jasmine Ellis is. She's been working her ass off at her craft for years and years and is finally starting to see some really interesting things take shape for her. And I'm so excited to be able to launch this episode as she is coming up to some pretty big announcements in her own career. More than that, we talk about the relationship between social media and performing as a craft. We talk about what it feels like to move, to dedicate yourself more fully to something you want to pursue as an artist. So many beautiful topics. I so enjoyed this conversation. I hope you do too. Here is my discussion with Jasmine.
So we're going to start somewhere you're probably not expecting, which is right behind you. There is like a beautiful little rack with these like synchronized perfect drink cups. Can you please explain like what those are and how that came to be? It's very pretty, but it's very striking.
Oh no. Oh, my friend Amber is going to love that you asked me that. Okay. So I am a Starbucks cup collector, but I do not feel that I am that deep. Okay. I've been accused. I got accused on Mother's Day of needing an intervention, and I really don't think it's a problem. Like a lot of people, I picked it up during the pandemic. It was just like Starbucks was one of the only things that were open. You couldn't go shopping. You couldn't look around. And I knew I was moving from Texas to LA. And so I got my Texas cup, which is navy blue and has yellow roses and the little Texas on the front. And I love it. Right. And then when I moved to LA, I got the Los Angeles cup, which I thought was limited edition, but it's at literally every terminal in LAX has it.
Yeah.
But just kind of kept going from there. And listen, okay, I have 22 at the moment.
Okay.
And a couple of them are like kind of limited edition. And I have gone to 4 different cup releases. In case you don't know, there are specific days that cups come out. They're limited edition. You can only get them. There's a limit to how many you can buy. And I did have my husband, whoa, I did not like that formation because it's kind of like
cousin. No, thank you. Skip.
My husband is not my cousin. He's white. That's so great. Being in an interracial relationship is really great. So you can beat those allegations. I don't know how redheads do it.
Tough sailing.
I know a couple that have been married since high school, and they're like the only redhead boy and the only redhead girl in my high school. And it was just like, anyways, I'm talking in circles, but I did have my husband go with me to a cup release. And I mean, I don't like the way I acted that day. I'm not proud of myself. The first store opened at 5. We got there at 5:45. They were already sold out. So I was like, let's go to another store. And then he needed to stop for gas. And I was like, you knew what day it was. Why isn't there gas in the car? And I just didn't like who I was becoming. And we went to 3 more stores, and then we got the cups, and then we celebrated at IHOP before the sun had even finished coming up. And that was how I got my all-time favorite cup, and I think I'm chilling out. But the way it works is every time you get 400 points in the app, you earn a cup. So I haven't paid for most of them, and I've never paid more than $50 for a cup. Which I know sounds crazy. Listen, Jack, you don't understand. Like, there are women who plan on retiring on these cups. There are people who will fight over. When I leave my car, I hide my cup so no one breaks my window for them, because some of them have like a really high street. I had someone offer me $200 cash on the spot for a cup because they couldn't find it. But believe it or not, I'm done. I'm not buying anymore unless something is so spectacular, but I'm done. I really am done.
It's funny because it's not hard for me to make the jump of sneakers, beanie bit, the idea of collecting things and having them have a meaning to you is not new. I was just unaware that the subculture of Starbucks cups was this deep. As a whole universe I had no idea existed.
there used to be a cup convention. I never went, and I don't think they're bringing it back post-COVID. But
Yeah.
the thing is, and this is what's really changing the market, and I promise I am not the cup comedian. But what is really changing the
Maybe
market?
you should be. This is like a rich vein to tap into. You're like could really connect with some people deeply on this shit.
The problem is I wouldn't want to manufacture a cup as my merch because one, they're very unwieldy to have in your suitcase and like move around. They crack easily. Like they're not super long wearing. And two, it's like the value is in how hard it is to find.
Right.
So like I would only release a cup if like Starbucks reached out to me and had me design a cup and it was in stores. And I'd have to get to like a very high position of influence. And I talk about my booty hole too much for that. But
We've all been there.
You know what I mean? I just don't think I'm like their target demo for that, you know. But cups. I was gonna say one more thing. Here's the thing: is Stanley is like, you know, it's a video killed the radio star situation where girls who have Stanley cups, which cost like around $40-50, which are steel all the way, have realized that Stanley cups keep your drink cold all day.
Yeah.
And it's just the functionality is so much better. Versus like, I mean, look, I'm drinking my breakfast out of like I don't even use them for their purpose sometimes. They're more decorative, but I like to match them to my outfit. So that's fun. Sorry, this is my life. It's my idea of fun.
Well, you acknowledge like this was a COVID thing. And in COVID, I think any of us and all of us were looking for anything that was like, this gives me a hum somewhere in my heart that makes me feel alive. And I don't care. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's sourdough. I don't care if it's furniture. I don't care if it's singing. Like whatever it is that makes me feel a little bit more alive when I'm trapped inside all day, I will do it.
Yeah, that's how it started. And, you know, I definitely think, and maybe that is like the snow finally melting from the grass in a sense of like COVID feeling, or at least listen, I know the government is never going to let us shut down again. They're not giving us more money. They're not closing the doors. Like anything can be wrong and they're just going to be like, well, what are you going to do? So it does really feel like, okay, we're outside again. Beyonce said we're back outside. She's on tour. You're done collecting cups and I'm fine with that. But now I also have one of every color, if that makes sense. So there's no needs anymore. There's no holes in my wardrobe.
Yes. But there may still be a cup someday, somewhere, that just makes you real happy. Like I bet a Hawaii cup is pretty dope. I can't say for sure, but I bet it's pretty dope.
See, also, oh my God, the Taiwanese cups. Like Taiwan and China have the best releases. See, that's the thing is I won't pay above market price for domestics, but if I could get my hands on a good foreign cup, like the Philippines grayscale rainbow cup, if anybody's got that one, let me know. I've got some good ones we can trade.
Perspective buyer.
How far have we got into this? We are 6 minutes in, and I'm still talking about.
We're crushing it. As far as I can tell, you're just working out material on cups so you can eventually set yourself up for the Starbucks collab. We're just planting seeds. That's all.
You know what's the funny thing is the reason why I don't have a joke about this, and it speaks a lot to the way I tell jokes, is because there's a certain way that I like to dig that gets women rolling, and men are just horrified. Like,
oh my God. Good.
It's just use a way to split the room that is so fun. And I've always been a girl's girl in that sense. And but I like to feel out my material, make sure it'll work for like the majority of the room. And that's the thing is you can't even open mic a joke that you know is going to go over dudes' heads. And it's not even that they won't understand. It's that the specificity and the need for excess just does not connect with them as funny. It just is, you know what I mean? The kind of person, like if you've met most single men, left to their own devices, if no one shamed them out of it, they would have the absolute minimum furniture of all times. Like as little furniture as a man can, like before I met my husband, he would just keep a pillow until it went so flat. So flat. And then rather than replace that pillow, he'd just get another pillow and then flatten that one. And so at one point he was sleeping on 4 flat pillows that equaled the width of one shitty pillow. And that you know what I mean? That's not the kind of person who enjoys the excess of coordinated cups. It's just not. So I don't seem funny. I just seem crazy. And you got to know your audience. And as long as women have husbands,
right. As long as men and women continue to pursue each other, I think those jokes they'll work just fine. But like, so I'm curious if you can go back, like, when did you start to realize that that was like a flavor of comedy that spoke to you and that you wanted to dig deeper into?
Oh man, so my process has been really interesting. I definitely think that I'm someone who's always had a voice, but when you first start out, the very first thing is like, well, you don't even find your voice in comedy until 3 years in. And for me, it was like all of a sudden people started to around like 4 years, people were like, oh, and she's really come into her voice. And I'm like, nothing changed. You just decided to treat me like a person. But I learned to trim the fat. I learned
Mm.
to cut back on setups when not necessary. And just like as a person with ADHD, I want to tell you every part of the story. But I started to like listen to myself objectively and go, what did I need to understand this? So it's almost like I've just started thinking in terms of like, what's the easiest way to understand what you're saying and get there? Because what I'm saying is funny, but sometimes I think all of the buildup is hilarious. And I know, and I hate to say it, but it's just kind of like, I am definitely a relatability comic. People fall for my personality and feel like I'm their best friend or their big sister. Like
Mm.
I remind them of someone they care about. And then we build that rapport and they're having the time of their lives. But that's why, I do get the occasional troll comment that's like, where's the joke? And it's like, did you know there are different kinds
Yeah.
of comedy?
Yeah.
Or do you prefer like a Laffy Taffy rapper where the joke is like on the rapper? Because we can do that, but I create a world, and there's
Mm.
different styles, but I'm still refining things, and I love that about myself. Like I am proud of the things I've chosen to put out there, but I'm getting better and better every day. I genuinely feel that way, and for me, just like realizing like, okay, relatability is my strength. That's where it really came from audience feedback. It came from being in Dallas and just the way that women would run up to me after shows and go, oh my God, you are so funny. I felt like I was listening to my best friend talk. It felt like like my little sister loves this, but she loves to watch what people say to me after shows because it's like each one wants to hold me hostage a little bit. And I love y'all all so much. So I let people, but I'll let like 100 people talk to me for 10 minutes each. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. But they feel like it was a conversation and, now it's their turn, So I love that. I love the afterwards, the interaction and the kindness. I really love that. I do feel like things have shifted post COVID a lot where
Mm.
now the audience is like, you're supposed to talk to me now. You're supposed to talk to me the entire time of your set. You're supposed to interview me. And I don't want to do that shit at all. So that's been hard.
That's super
Uh,
tough. So many questions bouncing through my brain. Are you from Texas?
I am. So I'm born and raised in Texas. My family's from Arlington, which is between Dallas and Fort Worth. Well, actually, I'm from Arlington. My parents are from Louisiana, but I grew up in Texas.
Okay, got it. And is that where you got your start? Is that where comedy
It is.
started for you?
Yes, I started comedy in 2013. I had graduated from college with a degree in broadcasting and thought I was going to be a serious news journalist. And then I kind of fell into radio and was a sidekick on a morning radio show. And I mean, I was the funny one. I brought the laughs. I did what I had to do, and I had a lot of fun with it. But after I graduated, there was a kind of a complicated situation where my mom was laid off of her job of 25 years, and my father
Wow.
was diagnosed with prostate cancer in the same week. And I went from being like, yeah, I'll just stay in this small town and keep this job that barely pays anything to being like, I have to help my family. So I moved back in with them. And also I was in this kind of confusing time of like finding out I had Graves' disease, which is, it sounds, first of all, the name sounds like I'm
Branding
about
is
to tell you
awful.
awful Graves, like put you in the Graves disease. What it is, and Missy Elliott had this, is it's a type of hyperthyroidism that if untreated can cause like really bad physical disparities. Like it'll make your eyes literally pop out of your head and give you like a very sunken look. And for me, it just manifested in being really tired all the time.
Mm.
And I was just like, why am I tired all the time? So anyways, between like getting treatment, helping my dad, my mom, was so much going on that I was just like, I have to quit this job and I have to find something better. So I was working 2 retail jobs and still working part-time at a radio station, but as a production assistant. And I was so burnt out and so tired. And one day I was at my retail job, uh, at a very exclusive luxury retail store where they have the meanest clientele in the world. And I I was in the break room just talking where anybody could hear me about how I was just ready to quit and run away and change my identity. And I don't really remember what I was saying, but there was this person in the break room who was just like in tears, cracking up. And he was like, "You are so funny when you're stressed out. I know this is not the time you want to hear this, but have you ever thought about doing stand-up comedy?" And I was like, "Why would I do that?" And he was like, "You should do it. I did stand-up in New York. Come with me to an open mic." And I went with him to an open mic. I lied because, oh my God, the way male comics swarm around a new woman in comedy, like the way, like, I will never, that is the closest I think I've ever gotten to just like really understanding what it is to truly be famous. But like, it was just like, "What's your name? How long have you been in comedy? Blah, blah, blah." So I lied. I lied and I said that I was writing a story about comedians. That way, like, they wouldn't ask me to do, and I didn't want to do comedy that night because I just wanted to observe. So I showed up a couple more times, and the more I watched the local open mic scene of Dallas, the more I was like, "Oh, you don't have to be great, and you can be bad." And so after my third time showing up, I did my first little 5 minutes at 2 o'clock in the morning at Dallas Comedy Club, which is no longer there. It's now, I'm sorry, Dallas Comedy House, which is now Dallas Comedy Club. And it went how you'd expect. There's 2 comics left in the room. And I felt so like, this is what I need to do. This is it. And I was telling stories about how frustrating it was living with my parents and, very millennial stuff about thinking I was getting old at 24, which is hilarious at 34 to think about. Just really being in that element. And it was a great place to start because it was so low stakes in the sense that, like, there isn't this big industry there, but each room was so different. People have this really narrow view of Texas, and that's not true. Like yes, there are your cowboys and your Republicans, but there's also like third largest Black population in the country. There's also like the second largest Hispanic population in the country. There's also a very large Asian and Middle Eastern and Indian population, which is South Asian population. It's very racially diverse. It's very politically diverse. People don't realize that, but especially in the cities like Dallas and Houston and Austin, very politically diverse. And each room was different. So I do Dallas Comedy House, which is just college kids on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, there was a clean comedy night, which was like white senior citizens. So you write a joke and you get to see it between those 2 audience within 24 hours. You know if it works or not. The next day, there's the Arlington Improv, which is mostly like Gen X Black people. They're used to like Def Comedy Jam style comedy. So like, tell it, but where's your confidence? Where's the way you're selling it? And I really do think it helped me get very good very fast because I would hit all the scenes. And they did have a little bit of cliquishness where like people who did XYZ room did this room, and they didn't intermingle as much. But I was the one who went to every room. And I think that kind of shows in the successes I've had. And I mean, great people are coming out of Dallas. Ralph Barbosa, if you've heard of him, he's blowing up out of like, he had that Don't Tell that did really well. And he's just like blowing up. It's a great scene. And there's this hunger to support local stuff. And I liked it a lot, but I ended up moving to Austin because I needed more stage time, and I did Austin for 3 years. And then I came here September of 2020. So now, ironically, I've lived in each of the scenes I did comedy in the equal amount of time. So I don't even know where I'm from anymore. So
That's so interesting. Something I wanted to key in on. So like, I've been a fan of comedy for a very long time. I've done a couple of open mics, and frankly, it's like much like waiting tables. I think everyone should have to do it 3 times just to have the experience of like, yes, you have to prepare something. Yes, you have to know it's not going to go well, and you still have to get up there and do it anyway, and just experience that and realize you're not going to die. I think that's a valuable lived experience for all human beings. But I feel like when I've listened to comics who have been at it for a long time, they all talk about the inevitable return to like the mundane, and that like real comedy happens in your life, like in your experiences with your family, in like the mundane day-to-day blah, blah, blah. And when a lot of people are starting out, they kind of go for this sensationalized ridiculousness because it can get a quick laugh. It sounds like you sort of started with your life and you started with those details. Like, was that something you were conscious of, or did you just kind of like trip and fall into that lane?
I fell into it, and I wonder if that's also possible. But then everybody's different, but I wonder if it maybe speaks to like what was going on in my scene. So there was Dean Lewis. Dean Lewis was the guy who taught the comedy class that everybody who was serious took. I didn't take it, and no disrespect to Dean, and then at all. But my friend who helped me get into this would tell me Dean says to do this, and Dean says to do that. So I didn't mean, I probably owe him a little bit of money because I feel terrible being like, I kind of lightweight audited your class. But his friend taught me rule of threes before I even got on stage, taught me rule of threes. And he said, write what you know. And that was easy for me because and that's the kind of thing is like, again, the brilliance of what Dean was suggesting, because Cody, who was my friend, was able to see me rambling about my life and go, oh man, that could be jokes. And so he was already having that ear, whereas opposed to like, so I'm actually working on being more absurd now. I feel like I covered a lot of the mundane. And because like, you know, like, I think it's kind of interesting though, because I feel like women, it's so funny. Before we started, I was like, I don't want to only talk about being a woman in comedy, but I do feel like women get criticized for talking about reality and realism and being relatable. Like we're not being creative. Cause God, I got a comment on my Don't Tell that was like, all women talk about is their body and sex and dating and clothes. And I was like, like, it's like whatever I'm doing, someone will be like, I saw another woman who had a joke about having curly hair. And it's just like, yeah, because like 60% of the population has curly hair. Like, you know, like I do not think being relatable is a weakness. I think it's actually one of my biggest strengths. So I've always written from that place. And then I didn't watch a lot of stand-up growing up. My parents were really strict. I would sneak and watch Comic View with my cousins and stuff, but I didn't watch a lot of stand-up. I didn't know who George Carlin was until an open micer who was accosting me was like, do you watch George Carlin? Do you know about Lenny Bruce? And it was like, I've always kind of seen things through the lens of just who do I relate to? So as a Black woman, I was like, ooh, Queens of Comedy. I'm going to watch that. And they're all like, you know, I mean, they were so raunchy and so wonderful. Like, God, I mean, Cheryl Underwood said her legs stay open so much, her IUD catches cable channels. And I remember Googling what is an IUD. It's amazing. So like, you know what I mean? The exaggeration, stuff like that kind of writing, like taking the relatable and then exaggerating it to a silly point. And then Wanda Sykes is my hero. And I've watched all of her stand up, and she again, well, actually kind of, yeah, I started with I'm a Be Me, which came out in 2008. That was the first special I watched in its entirety. And I watched that like a couple months before I started stand up, when I was like thinking about going to the open mic. Cody was like, just go. And she's in that one. She talks about how she came out, telling her mom she came out. And she talks about Obama and like what it was like to be a Black woman and experiencing a Black president for the first time and how that felt. But it was like these big world events through the lens of how I feel. And then the audience was like, that's how I feel, you know? And like that, she just does these great, oh my gosh, this description of giving a bikini wax. And she says it's like hot lion teeth on your booty hole. And just she's one of the few people I'd be nervous to meet, because I feel like it's like Beyonce and Wanda Sykes trying to be like, and I feel like I'd overwhelm them. But yes, the reality and the reality has always been where I've been. I've always been grounded in reality. Almost, I think it's something I want to work on, being more surreal and being more out there, because I think with the way the internet has changed how we consume media, you watch, you know, you wake up, you open TikTok, you watch 10 videos of people being like, that moment when blank happens. So relatable humor is on every format now.
Yes.
And it's so people watch it so much, stand-up feels like it needs to be something else. It needs to be it needs to be, if you have the audacity to stand in front of a stage with a microphone, you got to be saying something crazy. And I think I need to, it's weird. I feel like the times changed with the blink of an eye, and I have to change with the times. But at the same time, it's like what the audience in front of you expects is not what the audience on the internet expects. So something that will kill in front of a real live crowd will make, snooty pants who's on the internet 24 hours a day bored. And you can't because like who shows up to an audience? People forget, like, people who come to a show are normal, like so normal. And people who watch internet TV, stand up on the internet are not. So it's just, you want to post a video of you killing. It's that is my biggest roadblock right now, is not letting the internet affect what I do on the stage. And it's been a mind fuck.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because introverts get their energy from being alone, being with themselves, and extroverts get their energy from other people. So for almost 2 years, we were just together with me getting my energy from someone who desperately needed to be alone to have energy. He would drop little hints that things were not okay. He would drop little hints. At one point he did give me an actual pink slip. That was a problem. And I was like, what am I supposed to do with it? This is a 1-bedroom, okay? We don't even have an HR. What am I supposed to do? Then he was like, why don't we get hobbies, babe? And I was like, okay, sure, I'll get a hobby. And I started working on my candle business. Candles by Jasmine Ellis, yeah. Don't go to that website, it's not real. I never finished it, I have ADD. I was just like, this is enough for me, okay? Just talking about it made me feel the joy that running a business would give me. Just now, y'all were all happy for me. I felt valuable. Why would I actually ruin it with a business? About my white husband, though. I learned something, and I'm not gonna lie. If I had been given an option, if there were other models, I maybe would have gone a different direction. Hear me out. I still love him, but like, no one told me you have to reapply sunscreen. I didn't know that. Why are y'all so flammable? Why doesn't anybody? Nobody talks about this. There's no book, no what to expect when you're expecting to marry a white guy. It's not on any shelves. And if somebody had told me, like, they're always on fire, like, you have to, don't skip the ears, you'll ruin your whole honeymoon. If someone had told me that, I would have been prepared, but I was not. And he was just simmering all weekend.
I talked to a couple of comics, and like something they pointed out to me, which I now have seen, is like so many of them are posting crowd work. Because it creates natural tension of like, oh no, this interaction could go in so many different directions. It's not their material, so anyone who goes to see them is not going to get a repeat of the actual joke when they see it. And like, you build it in as part of your set as like a little texture change, and then you get to keep the rest of the stuff the same.
I understand why. I really, truly do. But a couple things are happening. I feel like maybe it's just an LA problem. I feel like the audience expects the crowd work and is disappointed if you don't do it. Like they're just like, why are you jumping into jokes? Like, it's strange now. I feel like if you don't, they interrupt you more. And it's like, we're getting to this point with like so many types of light heckling that like, I can't even call it heckle. I mean, you know what I mean? We lived with a decade of Steve Hofstetter, Heckler Destroys videos. Like, the audience has gotten like, they're like, if I come, and maybe this is an LA thing, but they're like, if I come to a show, I am the show. And I'm just tired of them so much. And then I don't want people to think that I only do, I don't know. I got to start posting more of that type of stuff on stage. God, I mean, you go to any show in LA now, and the back of the room, there's like a row set up with everybody's phones and cameras, and every show looks like and I mean, some of the good crowd work videos, like the people who are really pros at it, they've got one camera on the stage, one in the audience, and it's like, what if you're just the kind of person who came to laugh? Now you're worried you're not camera ready. Now you're worried you're going to get called a mean name or made fun of. If you don't remember how long you've been dating and you take a second to hesitate, he's going to say you got a side chick. And like, it's so frustrating too, because it makes me mad. I was talking to one of my really good friends about this the other day, and I was just like, crowd work used to be the parachute you jumped out of the plane with when the plane was going down. And now we're trying to build the whole plane out of crowd work. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
I'm seeing the live effect of the people who tell you, oh yeah, you don't burn your material, do all crowd work. They do. Like, I'm literally seeing like an 8-minute set with 2 jokes in it. And it's driving me crazy. And and it's happening to a lot of my very funny peers, and I'm just like, but who knows? Maybe I'm just showing up the one day they decided to do a crowd work set, and they're gonna chop that up and put that on the internet for weeks. We don't know anything. All you can do is focus on yourself and run your own race.
Yeah.
And do your own thing. And I just don't want someone to be disappointed with me because I came to do my job. So I have been, when I'm on the road and I'm headlining small rooms, I do ask that my features and my openers don't do crowd work. And I hope that isn't like squashing anybody's thing, but I do not like a drunk, lethargic audience that's been talked to all day. I'm tired of going up fourth and I know everybody's job. That's like crowd work to me is the headliner's parachute. Why is everyone else using it? Now it doesn't even open. I'm sticking with that. And I probably sound like a hater and an old bitch, but I'm saying
no, I will try to choose my words carefully because like there's a lot of corollaries within music, right? And like I was listening to a podcast the other day, and like it's something that you see all the time now is people just start performing their songs in the middle of like train stations, grocery stores, like anywhere where there's lots of people who can stare at you, like they just break out into song, and it's great for reaction content, blah 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 blah. And this person was like, I don't even give a fuck what the people in person think. I only do it so people on the internet see the reactions, and then the internet blows me up. And I was like, kill me before I get there. Like I don't want to do that. Like the idea of like I don't care about the people who are seeing me in person doesn't compute in my brain. And I do think that inevitably like these things always like extend too far to the wings and then snap back. And so I imagine what will happen with all these things is like it will get to a point of ridiculousness, and then more audiences will be like, can you just fucking do your job and not quiz me for half the show? Like I came to laugh, to have my stupid 2-drink minimum and to laugh. Like that's exactly why I go to a comedy show.
Yes, yes, and I just fear for the person who just likes to laugh, who doesn't come anymore. Or like I think when I see a crowd and it's like about to start and the first 3-4 rows are empty and no one's in the front, I'm like, none of those people want to be talked to.
Yeah.
And I hate that that's created that fear for them. It's like so actually sometimes I'm open like this. Again, I'm gonna sound like such a hater to my peers, but I'm open like I'm like, you guys like crowd work? No? Okay. Well, listen, I'm a middle child, so this is gonna be all about me. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm a crowd rest comedian. You can shut the fuck up. You're very welcome to. This is a safe place to be quiet. And it gets a laugh. If they like me. Sometimes people think I'm nagging and they can't tell I'm kidding, but I don't know. I just got to focus on but I will say to my peers' credit, they're able to have material constantly. Whereas like for me, it's like I don't post online as much as I should, but God, what is the should? I mean, according to TikTok, it's 3 times a day. It's Twitter is 2 to 5 times a day. Instagram, it's at least once a week of fully like in frame. Sound is great. Video is great. I mean, God, what I can't stand about stand-up sometimes is it feels like it is seen as the lowest art form, I think. In my opinion, it really is. Because think about how many people fail at something else and then do stand-up as their backup. Like it's the safety net. Like you're not a porn star anymore. Now you tell jokes. You're not
an actor. Now you're a stand-up. Yeah. I hear you.
Stand-up will always be there, and people will always want to see if they're funny. Like that's enough to sell, right? And so it's like if you're starting stand-up, it's like you're starting from the bottom, and then you gotta like you meet someone who's like, oh, I'd love to meet with you. You do stand-up, and then like, do you have scripts? What have you written? What do you produce? What do you edit? Where's your podcast? Like, oh, I don't have a podcast right now. I'm working on 2. But the shame I feel when my answer is not right now, like I feel, and it's just like, it's never enough to just be a stand-up. But God, and this is the frustrating part is I feel like I love being on stage so much. And I feel like sometimes that part doesn't count for anything. I love being on stage. I love telling jokes I wrote, and I love making people laugh. And that's not the business right now. And it's frustrating. It's like the only point of having good jokes is so you can put it together in a special. That's what it feels like. You know what I mean? This is what 10 years sounds like, folks. This is what it sounds like. Not like I talk to people who are 30 years in, who have either this very zen or this scary energy of like depressed and scared that I don't want to have. It's sometimes, oh my God, Jack, I'm sorry, I'm talking so much, but you just made me think of something. I did a show the other day with this comic who'd been doing about 30 years, and she invited me to this like workout mic she does. And everyone there was 30, 40 years in the game. And everyone was very angry. Like I heard so many angry pronoun jokes. And I was like the only one they didn't know. So everyone was telling their jokes to me like I was the audience member, which I was like, oh my God, this is stressful. I hope I don't make people feel like anyways. And then I was getting up to leave, and the comic, she was so nice. She goes, how'd it feel in there? And I was like, kind of intense. She goes, this is like the ghost of Christmas future, isn't it? It's a little scary, right? Look at it. She goes, if you don't get a TV show in the next 5 years, you'll be one of us.
Oh my God. That's horrifying.
I was like, God, please help me get a TV show. Oh God, please. Abbott Elementary, something. The Father, the Son, something.
Oh, yeah, I I deeply relate to what you're talking about. I'm 36, like, and I'm 2 years into a career in music. Like, to say that I'm considered ancient is is a dramatic understatement. And there's this tension of like, I know why I create, I know the place from which I create that I think makes the best music, and then I see the like laundry list of shit I am quote unquote supposed to do every day if I want to build a fan base and create engagement and build awareness and blah 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 blah. And like I get stuck because when you see the people it's working for, you're like, well, those people are doing all the things I want to do. They're touring, they're building a fan base, they're connecting, like they're getting opportunities, yada yada yada. And I feel like what we don't see and what we don't talk about is like the other 99.9% of people doing the exact same stuff with the exact same amount of effort, posting every day, trying all the shit and having it not work. And then they're in this terribly stuck place of like, I've now invested all this time and energy into the system that was supposed to support me. It hasn't. I have sacrificed making the art that I want to make as a result. And so now I don't have that either. And I'm just in this lost place. And it is like, I feel like it is from that place where you find out either people who are like, I'm going to do this no matter what until I die, or like, I did not sign up for this. I don't want it. I'm out of here. But like, it's
Yeah.
it's make or break for a lot of people. For a lot of people.
And that is very real. So for me, it's like the hard part, it's all the auxiliary stuff. And that's the things that I have like put energy in. And then when I'm feeling overwhelmed, it's the first thing I pull back on when
For
it's
sure.
like post and podcasting. But it's just like, I can be like, I just don't even want to do this anymore. And then someone's like, do you want to do my show? And I'm like, yes. I love being on stage. And I feel like if I had that passion for posting TikToks, if I was just like, I love looking at videos of myself, I love like that, just, I don't know. I really envy people who have that, like that thing in them where it just lights off parts of their brains. But what I've learned is I'm like, instead of being envious, let me get curious. Acting class kind of taught me about curiosity. Whenever I want to be like, when I first moved to LA, I thought everybody was really rude. But then I was like, I'm curious. Why would you double park your car? Like, what's a not narcissistic reason to do this? So instead of just like constantly ascribing anger to people, I've started just like wanting to know, and it's helped me not be so stressed out. And so I like made friends with someone who's like, I'm like, it's like a real genuine friendship. And she happens to be really big on TikTok. And like, I learned that like, aside from posting, she's almost never on the apps because she doesn't want to like cloud her, like she has a voice. You can have an internet voice. Like she has a voice on the internet and like what she's doing. And she pays attention to her metrics, but she doesn't really pay attention to what other people are doing enough to like kind of know, but she's not on there for hours like I am. And I'm just kind of learning about like how that keeps her fresh and in her own life. And then when something funny in her life happens, she's like, let me share this with the people. So I feel like really she's passionate about storytelling and sharing. And I was like, wait, I'm passionate about those two things. It's just the way I'm used to doing it is on stage. So that's making me feel more like this is a good story. I should share this, as opposed to, I need this to go viral. I should post this. Like just thinking about, you got to remember your why. And then I feel like all the right people can tell when they're being sold to. They can tell when you're trying to sell something to them. So when it just feels like you're giving them something, they like it better. So I'm just trying to stay in that space. But yeah, I never want to get to the point where I see the people in front of me as just props. and it's all about the people on the internet.
Yes.
But again, about the curiosity of the person who says that thing, like I can understand them needing to get in that headspace so that they're not embarrassed or uncomfortable. Because the amount of, like, when I've got this stupid fucking tripod and I'm walking through, I feel there's a little part of me that feels embarrassed. Like, I'm not the 9 o'clock news. What am I doing? Like, it is a little cringy, you know? And sometimes you have to be like, respectfully, fuck y'all, to not feel cringe. You have to turn off the part of your brain that feels cringe.
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And like, I think there's more to that thread. But before we go there, like when you started comedy, it was about your parents going through this incredibly difficult week. And you're like, I need to get out. I want to do something. Like, how would you describe your why now, 10 years in?
Ooh, that is a good question. So, of course, and like update on that, my dad is cancer free. My mom has a great new job. They're doing great. They're older, so they're looking into retiring soon. And I would love to be able to help them be comfortable. And like, I'd love to be so successful, I could buy them a house or something. Well, they have a house, but like, pay off the house or whatever. But my why, and that is the interesting part, is like now the why has to be all me, because I'm not living in this place of like, oh, what am I going to do? I have to do this. So for me, the why is I love it. I love the sound of human laughter. It is like crack to me. It brings me so much joy. I love entertaining people. I love making people happy. And I don't know, things just flow to me in a way that just feels like fate. You know what I mean? It just feels like it's supposed to be, like I'm supposed to be doing it. So I love it. If I stop loving it, I'll definitely stop doing it. Now, are there some shows that I don't love? Absolutely. You could almost create like I don't know, some kind of charts, like the more a show pays, the more I'm gonna hate doing it sometimes, but please keep giving me money. Please. I love money. And but I will say, for the most part, like I rarely do shows that I hate for no money anymore, which I like. I like that I'm not in the position where I'm taking everything. I say no to a lot. I'm so proud of myself. The pandemic taught me the word no, and it has helped me to avoid burnout in a lot of ways, because I can look at the situation and go, 4 hours, $200, 4 hours back, pay for my own hotel. No. And like, it's that simple. Like, if I'm not making a lot of money, I should be making a lot of opportunity and a lot of joy. And then I have to go, okay, 3 years ago, this club had never seen me before. So I needed the opportunity so I could get in that room. But it's been 3 years. They should pay me this. The inflation went up. I should go up. Hotels cost more. I'm learning to say no, which is hard, but important.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. Different tack on the question. Like, you've done this for 10 years. I imagine there's been a lot of material in that time. Like, are there topics that you feel any fear around going into? Are there jokes you love to tell but have a lot of trouble writing? Like,
that's a good question. Fear going into. I don't feel any fear, but there are certain things that I think, am I contributing anything to this? Like, again, LA has its own little culture. I was on a show the other day, or I was at a show, and I watched, of the 6 comics, which were all cis individuals, 4 of them had trans jokes. And some were more on the transphobic side. Some were not really saying anything. Some were funny. And it feels like if you don't have a joke about trans people, you don't have jokes right now. And it's like, why do I, like, it's just like, first of all, this is what, 1% of the population? Like, I do honestly think that so many cis people having something to say about trans people all the time is contributing to this narrative that they're taking over the world. And that's kind of ridiculous. So I have no fear around talking about trans people. I just don't think my voice lends anything to it. So I give that as an example of, that's something where I just don't talk about it because I don't think I'm lending anything to that. I'm not servicing that issue. I have talked about BLM, Black Lives Matter. I have talked about protesting. I have talked about discrimination. I've talked about I've talked about as a sexual abuse survivor, I have talked about rape. I've talked about things that are really serious, and I do them in a way that I think is nuanced and funny and smart and adds something to the conversation. But I do think sometimes the best thing we can do for something is to listen to the people who've experienced it. I kind of just don't care about what cis people have to say about being trans, like respectfully. It's just not. I know so many funny ass sorry, so many funny ass trans comics that are killing it, that are so funny. It's just like, I just don't need to hear your opinion. You know what I mean? And half the time, to avoid being canceled, the cis person's opinion is, I don't really have an opinion. And it's like, then why did you even set up the joke? Shut up. I You know what? I hate that. And that's what happens when we get to this point where we're trying to tell jokes for an algorithm or tell jokes for trending. Like, the topic of the day is blank, so I'm talking about blank. But I do worry about telling this, like, being accused of saying the same things over and over. And one of the criticisms that women get is that we talk about families and relationships too much. And it's like, that composes a lot of what people do. Like, it is a lot. Like, I have 10 minutes about my decision to be child free that I think are very, very funny. But I really, like, someone went up after me the other day. Like, a comedian went up after me, and they were like, whew, we're talking about kids a lot today. And I was like, I did not think that my 10 minutes on not wanting kids was about kids. I thought it was more about the societal pressures women have not to have children. So sometimes you can't even control how people perceive something. Right. My jokes about being married to my husband, people might hear them as her opinions on white people. And it's like, no, I just want to know why he didn't know how to season soup. Yeah. Like, what went wrong? And so, like, I try not to, like, harp on the same topic too much, because I never want to be seen as, like, bullying any one group or one thing. And I'm not a person who, I have no ill intent. I never ever do. I talk about body positivity and body neutrality, and those are topics that I enjoy talking about. But I know for some people, they just hate fat people. And so anytime a fat person says anything other than, I'm working on being skinny, people are like, you're happy with your disgustingness. And then they smoke 20 cigarettes and, and write hate comments. Yes. If I don't think anything's off limits, but I think everyone should ask themselves, am I contributing something good? Is what I'm saying valuable? And I just haven't thought of anything super funny or valuable about a lived experience I don't have yet. So I just keep listening. And I keep listening to my friends and my colleagues and letting them be great and hilarious. And if that's the trending topic of the month, I'm okay letting that wave pass. I heard a lot of people tell terrible BLM jokes in 2020, really awful shit. And it's just like, people are so worried about being canceled. And it's just like, well, maybe if you talked about things you genuinely believed in and cared about, instead of trying to follow the trends, you wouldn't have to worry about it. Because if you mean no harm and you say what you mean, then the worst thing, people can be offended by things you mean, but if you mean them, that's just part of it, Yeah. But I hate when people get upset that they're being punished for saying something they didn't mean. It's like, then why'd you even say it?
Yeah.
Just say what you mean.
Yeah. Say what you mean.
Your dreams belong here too, and so do your fears. Your wishes, your stitches, your visions, your tears, insecurities, inhibitions, your imperfections, your inner queer. Even the part of you love, even though you know it's so incredibly weird. And you will always be enough. Because even when you're tired and it's rough and it's hard and it's lonely and it's tough, no one can ever take this away from you. You are love.
I appreciate that this is kind of a heady question, but like, what do you think the role of comedy is? And like, I think that question often gets framed as like, what's the role of comedy today? As if like the last 5 years means that everything is different. I think comedy within like the structure of humanity plays an important role, but I'm curious to someone who like has devoted her life to it. Like, what do you think the purpose or the role of comedy is in this like honeycomb structure of society we're living in?
It's hard to explain now, because if we're talking about stand-up comedy, it is this really niche specific sport that not everybody loves. If we're talking about just the general humor, as hubris is like part of the world, like on all the different things that we can, because we consume humor in so many ways, in commercials and ads, and like humor is everywhere around us. And like, that's one thing I've learned is like comedians work on so many things that you see around you, not just stand up. And I do feel that humor can educate, humor can inform, humor can connect. I think connectivity is the biggest thing. Connecting over humor can make you feel like you're not so alone, like you're not going crazy. And I mean, that is the beauty of a lot of these silly little 30-second TikToks where someone's just like, that moment when you realize you left your expensive Starbucks cup on the hood of your car. I don't know. I just thought of something silly, but like connectivity, like feeling like you're not alone. I think that is the heart of humor. And the way I do it is in a small, dark room with low ceilings and a microphone. But there's so many different ways to do it. And I just think that connection and that lightheartedness is just, I will never stop making jokes. If for whatever reason I got banned from every comedy club in America, I don't know, for whatever, that would never happen. I would still be the person who makes the cashier laugh at the checkout. I would still be the person who makes the flight attendant laugh. Humor is connection to me, and it's priceless. I love it. That is the role of comedy. It is really, I think it's as human and natural as music is, in that sense that like we have, how babies are born with rhythm and can just dance naturally. I think we also have comedic timing. Like we really, I mean, again, you ever seen a baby throw their cup and then realize you're going to pick it up and do it again? Like they know how to build on a scene. This kid, like, it's just, it's magic. It's human. It's natural. And I saw this great tweet about how, like, you ever notice how Nepo babies always gravitate towards the arts? And it's like, because that's what people do when their needs are met. When you're not living with fear and anxiety and discomfort, you don't know where your next meal is coming from, then you create. And so I think I am truly blessed to be in this position where I'm creating, and like, like I might live in a shitty apartment with thin walls in LA, but I get to create in it. And I'm so lucky. I really do think I'm very lucky.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Like continuing to weave and to navigate. So I think you said 3 years ago you put out Trash Baby.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you think about just like the life of stand up, it's like you're in clubs all the time, you're refining jokes, you're practicing your material, you're getting better and better, you're building your hour. At some point finally you're like, this is it. This is the hour. I'm going to put this out into the world as like a whole thing. Can you just talk about what it's like to sort of the question you always ask is like, how did you know you were ready? Or what was it like deciding like, I can't work on this anymore, I'm putting it out in the world?
Well, a big motivator was my peers, because even though I say like I should only be running my own race, I say that, but I pay attention to what other people are doing. And I was watching people making albums and seeing how that was doing different things for them. And at the time, I didn't have any credits. I'd never been on television. I had never produced anything with anyone else. I wanted to do an album because truthfully, I wanted a credit. I wanted to give myself a credit. And I was like, that's the way to do it. And I do have an hour. I was very lucky in being able to build my hour so quickly. So actually it's been almost 4 years. I don't know. I guess it's been almost 4 years. It was 2019. Beginning of 2019. And this is again with my insecurity and always comparing myself. I got married January 2011. Or sorry, not 2011. I'm not that old. I got married January 11th, 2019. And I remember right after my wedding going, I don't want to be this person that just gets married and that's all they do. Because people were already like, oh, are you going to quit? Like, I don't know what it is about me. People just want to try me. So they just be like, oh, you're going to quit comedy now that you're married? And I was like, why? Just real sideways shit. And so I felt like I needed to prove that, no, I'm working even harder at this. Like, you're not going to see, why would you see less of me? But I think that's one of those ways where we just try to discount women sometimes as a culture. Anyway, so I was like, I want to do something. And there was this label called Sure Thing Records in Austin, and they put out some really great albums. And I was like, sure, let's talk about it. I reached out to another label. They said no, they didn't think I was ready, but I didn't have anything to show them. I had like 10 and 20-minute videos that weren't very edited. And that's the funny thing too, is so many gatekeepers, it's like their job is pretending to be stupid. Like, you'll send them a video of 20 minutes of great material. But if the video is shaky and the sound isn't great, they go, you're just not ready. And then you'll send them the same video, but with 2 camera angles and the sound is turned up and they go, wow, you are so funny. How long have you been doing? And I'm not kidding. These are exact quotes from someone who represents me now. And I literally sent them the same jokes. The only difference was it was better quality of how it was sent. And it's just like, again, one of those things where money and connections help, because I had this label and I was able to pay this great videographer. So I set aside money. I was like, this is what we're going to spend our money on. Like, I'm going to save money. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to put it together. So I reached out to some local clubs in Texas. I did the secret group in Houston. I did a couple different ones in Dallas, and I like ran my hour. So I set it up. I was like, if I can run this at least 4 to 6 times, I'll know what works and what doesn't work and get the kinks out and really be ready. But the beautiful thing is I was 6 years into doing comedy. And so I had really figured out like what were my strongest bits. And another thing that really pushed that time period for me is it was a lot of stuff I wrote leading up to my wedding. And so funny. So many comedians are divorced and very jaded about marriage. So they're going to hear this and be like, why would you say this? But like, I really do mean it. I saw like my single life as a closing of a chapter in a sense. And I felt like I was going to talk about life differently as a married person because I'm in this partnership that's different and I'm doing different things. And I had a lot of jokes about being single. And I don't like telling jokes in the past tense. Most of the time, I think it's kind of confusing. So I was like, let me put out this hour with these jokes from the past tense of being single, finding love, and then also trying to talk about my experience with an eating disorder. I ended up cutting that out, actually. This is kind of personal, but I just wasn't ready for that to be out in the world. And now I'm actually working on another special that I want to do that talks about mental health and specifically the Black woman superhero complex and how it's so hard for us to get help because we're supposed to be strong for everybody else. You know what I mean? And so I've got some things I want to write about that. So I'm very I performed for an hour and 10 minutes and we cut that down to 45 minutes. That became the album. And we did it in one take, when I only got one chance. It was supposed to be in the small room at Cap City, and then I sold it out. So they moved it to the big room, and it was about 90% full. And Cap City in Austin is now inside the Domain Mall, and it's way smaller. But I wish, I think the room fit like 300, so it was like a little bit over 200 people there. I talked to the local news to promote it. I really put a lot behind it. And the only bad thing is I'm so proud of what I did in that moment. And I think it was just so great. Like I listened to it. I think it's great to the point where I don't want to do anything else unless it's going to be as good. And before that, I wasn't even putting out stand-up clips. So everything had to be perfect. And then I released Trash Baby and I put it out there, or I show it to some different people. I ended up getting an agent because he liked what I put out there. An agent that rejected me when I sent him the poor quality video of the same jokes. You know what I'm saying? Good things are happening for me, and he's able to get me Dry Bar. And Dry Bar happens like a month after I already recorded Trash Baby. And I don't regret my Dry Bar at all, but they had all these caveats about what jokes to tell and like how clean to be. And I had just recorded Trash Baby. And so I held myself to the standard that it had to be material that wasn't on the other one and also had to be their level of clean. And I had no shows lined up in between where I could really do that amount of time. I mean, it is what it is. It's out there. It's the most visible piece of my work. I do think the Trash Baby is stronger than Nobody's Queen. Nobody's Queen was the Dry Bar one, but Nobody's Queen got an NPR award. So who am I to say? I am so hard on myself sometimes. And I want to be indisputably perfect, and I have got to release myself from that and understand that like nothing is perfect. And also, I will never be your cup of tea if you don't like tea. Like some people don't actually like tea. They think they do, they're tea critics, but if your favorite tea maker died 30 years ago, you don't fucking like tea. If you don't like millennial Black girl and anxious tea, my tea is going to stink to you. And that's okay, so I'm getting comfortable with it. Damn, what was the question?
I don't know. Doesn't matter.
You asked about knowing when my hour was ready.
Yes,
And for
that's
me,
right.
it was I set the deadline. I said my hour needs to be ready by the end of 2019. I was also like, I just turned 30. So I was like, ooh, that's another accomplishment in my 30s, because I didn't want to just be married.
Yes.
So I put a lot of pressure on myself of like, I wanted an album and a marriage in the same year. After I'm like, God, the triggers for stress. Yeah, I know. And I had to plan both. And honestly, planning the album took as much stress as planning the wedding. It was crazy. I set the date and I said, I'm going to do this by a certain time. And so for me now, I'm kind of thinking I'm going to be 35 March 4th of next year. And I really want to put out a special before then. A lot has changed between 30 and 35. A lot has changed between 2019 and 2023. I feel like they're just worlds apart. And I've experienced so much that I want to talk about freely. And, I went from being someone who thought they wanted kids to being like a vocal child-free advocate. Like, I've even been called like a childless influencer, like a non-mom blogger. And like, I just have a lot I want to say and a lot I want to do. And I love the creative control that Trash Baby gave me. And I want to be in that position, but with money behind me this time. So that's hard. I'm hoping that the right thing falls into place and I can say yes to the right thing. And I've had to say no to things that would have been the wrong thing, like another 10-minute this or that, but I also don't want to go years without releasing things. So it's,
Yes.
You're ready. I'll say this, you'll know your hour is ready when you can tell the joke over and over and you're not changing anything. You don't feel like you need to change anything.
Yeah.
Then you know it's ready.
Yeah.
But sometimes if you're like me and you're like a nervous wreck and sometimes you just have to decide I'll be ready by this day and then get it ready.
Yes. A little pressure, right? Like I was just talking about this the other day. It's constant, gentle pressure. And all three of those things have to be present. Like it can't be intermittent. It can't be sometimes it's on, sometimes it's off. It does have to be pressure. It has to be moving toward a goal or an outcome or a direction that is meaningful to you. And it has to be gentle. Because if it's just constant pressure, you'll fucking break. Because we're human.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't work.
And for me, it's like, ADHD, I'm triggered by dopamine. I need it. So for me, I was like, it's going to feel so good when this is finished. You're going to love this. And also like, I promised myself a party. So I was like, you get to have a party when it's finished. Like, yeah, I'm motivated by pizza parties. I am a child of capitalism. All right. Someone can be like, if you meet your goals. So I was like, I'm going to have a release party. And it was so fun. And we did it as we also did like a charity drive thing. And it was really fun. And I just want it to be even bigger and better when I do the next thing. And I hope it works out. I really do. So that's the plan.
That's beautiful. You have a lot of stuff coming up. You're working on 2 podcasts. You want to do a special. You're getting up on stages in LA. It's beautiful. Where can people find you? Where can they learn more about what you're up to?
So this week actually, when does this come out?
Not next week. So think September timeline for stuff.
That's okay. Well, you can always find me online at TikTok at Jasmine Ellis Comedy, Instagram at Jasmine Ellis Comedy, Facebook, you guessed it, Jasmine Ellis Comedy, and then Twitter, not the same because I couldn't get it. It's too long. So I'm Jasmine C. Ellis on Twitter. Hate it. Sounds like Cialis. I can't fix it. So there's that. I'm always on there. I actually have a couple festivals I'm doing in September, so I'm really excited. I'm going to be at the Kansas City Comedy Festival and the Kentucky Comedy Festivals. I got 2 festivals in the kind of southern Midwest. And you can just keep up with me online. I'm always posting about different shows. My podcast, my podcast, Television in Black and White, should be available. It's my husband, who is a comedy writer and a television junkie like myself. We dissect the representation of race on television throughout the years. We talk about concepts like the Black best friend, which eventually became the unnecessary white character, and things like that. And we are like, it's also just this love letter to great TV, but also these people who just grew up differently, introducing him to things. He introduces me to Frasier. I introduce him to Martin. And we just explore these different TV tropes and connectivity between the two. You know how Hollywood has basically put out sometimes the exact same movie with a white cast and a black cast a week apart just to see what happens and what happens with the intersection of other races and like it's just really interesting. And yes, we do happen to be an interracial couple who are both obsessed with TV. So I think we're great. So you can listen to that. It's going to be streaming everywhere. And it's great. And then I'm also bringing back, I have an AMP show, which is a kind of like a podcast, but it's live where I can take listeners and we talk about the songs you would put on the playlist of your life. So that's called Rhythm and Bay, and you can follow Rhythm and Bay on everything. So make sure you're listening.
That's beautiful. Jasmine, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us and sharing your wisdom, your experience, and your cup collection, perhaps most importantly.
Please trim as much of that as you see fit.
I think we're going to keep all 6 minutes. I'm pretty sure we're just going to let that ride. It'll be great.
Oh God. Like, I want someone to tell me what the cups represent. Like, is it me trying to like hold water in the world? Like, is it like, what does it mean? There's probably some weird definition of like what it actually says about my personality that I chose cups of all things to collect.
Or it brings you joy, and that's enough.
That is enough.
That's enough. That's enough. Thank you again.
Thank you, Jack.
Do you know anyone who you think would make a great guest on this podcast? The good news is there's almost no qualification. They need to be a human and they need to make art. I'm not particularly concerned if they make art for 100,000 people or for no people and they're still doing it in their home. This podcast is all about telling the stories of artists and how their craft has evolved over time, how they perform in their own unique way. So if you have a friend that you love listening to, if you have someone who you think has a really interesting story, I would so love to talk to them. Please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email us at stagedivepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for watching Stage Dive again. My name is Jack Dawkins. It was a pleasure to have you here. Before I sign off, I do want to thank Kalisa Mickle and Holly Johnson for being the hearts, the guts, the brains behind the operations that make this entire podcast possible. They work so hard to continue to improve it and put it in front of more people and allow it to continue to live on. So thank you to them, thank you to our guest, and thank you to you for watching. I appreciate you.